Welcome to the Working Audio Tools podcast, the home of all things mixing and mastering with myself, Ed Thorne, and fellow mix engineer Paul Third. Today we have another mix comparison episode for you, and the brief was to honor the rough as closely as possible, but to improve on it where we could. Now, the problem with this track is it was mixed by Mark Daniel Nelson, who is a wonderful mix engineer. He just pushes faders and tickles a few things and adds a bit of sparkle. Does some mid-side processing, I think, and the result is everything he does is just wonderful, and it's a beautiful track. This is a track called Nashville featuring Chad Burton. Now, this was interesting because I feel like I tried to reverse engineer this, and Paul, unsurprisingly, had a different approach. What was your approach, Paul?
My approach was to honour the rough but in broad brushstrokes. So no reverse engineering, just kind of, listening to it. And what I was copying was the balance, the levels, the placement. If something was left, then it went left. And really it was a case of trying to be very broad in my thinking and then kind of giving my interpretation of it. And that was my way of, representing the rough. So in regards to, say, the kick and the bass, I knew that the kick and the bass and, the reference, and we'll call Mark's mix the reference, was laid back. It was tucked back. It didn't have a lot of attack. It was meant to sit back. So instead of me trying to get the exact kick sound, the exact bass sound, it was more about, averagely, how much low end is there, how much attack is in there, it needs to be tucked back, and then, get the levels right. And it was more, again, tucked back. Not exact, tucked back. In the vocal, again, I was like, I did always that's the one thing I'll never change is my vocal. I'll always do my vocals the same way, and then I'll hear how it sounds, and then I'll, tweak to taste. But even to the drums, it was a case of, that's how far he's got the snare in the mix. Okay, just get rough. I'm just kind of thinking broad and then not getting too much in the weeds and not trying to get the exact reverb, the exact delay, just trying to, as if a client gave it to me and went, that's what I've got just now. I want you to stick close to that, but give me your interpretation, because I think that's what mixers are paid to do.
Fair enough. I was the same with the vocals because there was something I wanted to do differently with the vocals, which I think you'll hear both Paul and I did do slightly differently. We should caveat this conversation with the fact that there is a mastered version of this that's been released. However, we've been referencing the Produce Like a Pro Academy multi-track mixed version that Mark did. So if you go and find the track on Spotify or Tidal, we'll try and remember to leave a link below to that. Bear in mind, the mix has been mastered, which is something worth considering later, because I feel like they've added in a little bit more low end.
Yeah, they have.
And they've slightly curtailed and softened some of the brighter bits that dynamically pop out here and there in places in the original mix. All right, so for the sake of going in alphabetical order, being Ed, I will go first. So this is my mix of Nashville featuring Chad Burton.
Been on my mind since I was a little child. Guess I had no choice from the way it made me smile. And all I ever wanted is to live my dream. Where I come from, it gets hard just to make ends meet. Traveled up and down any road, but still I just can't seem to find a home. But please don't ask me to stay. I got no time to waste. It's just me and my suitcase. Nashville, I'm on my way. that wants to be a star. Live in a big old house and drive a real nice fancy car. But in my life I've gotten used to the simple things, and there's no real place in a smiling face. It's a down old thing. Oh, traveled up and down any room, still I just can't seem to find a home. But I just don't have any more time to waste. So I grab my bag and I'm gonna be on my way. So please don't ask me to stay. I got no time to waste. It's just me and my suitcase. Nashville, I'm on my way. Please don't ask me to stay, 'cause I got no time to waste. But it's just me and my suitcase. Nashville, I'm on my way. Oh, yeah, coming down the highway. Oh, I'm coming down the highway.
So, straight off the bat, compared to the original, I feel like, in hindsight, I didn't quite get the level of the strings right in the intro, and maybe in a couple of other places. I was optimistic with the bass and with the kick, compared to the Produce Like a Pro mix version. But the mastered version actually leans itself to that a little bit more as well. So that's a happy coincidence. And also from a mastering point of view, I feel like I did get that wrong in terms of I didn't quite execute that. When you hear Paul's track, he's executed this element very well. I was optimistic with the levels, but I feel like you could take that back in mastering. You can take low end away. It's easier to take low end away than it is to put it in. So again, these could be decisions. I feel like both the mixes are so close in the ballpark of honouring the rough mix. And I think this is the first time you and I have actually both tried to target the reference mix and got quite close. So it's going to be quite a subjective episode. As always, comment kindly. Only say things that you would be prepared to read if you were the ones putting your mixes out online for everyone to slag off.
Correct. So for me, I think the low end is just maybe half a dB, maybe too loud. Maybe I would tuck back, maybe the sustain a little bit at the low end. The kick, maybe half a dB. But I think what's interesting is that what you said about the mastered version is that, they've added a little bit more sub to that. I think maybe at the detriment of the song a little bit. I think the difficulty with songs like this is because it's such a very mellow, relaxed track, it's quite... you've got to be cautious about when you add any form of punch or attack. Like, even like me, you can. This is probably like the most relaxed snare you've ever heard in an Ed Thorne mix.
There was a version that wasn't so relaxed.
I know, and it was interesting me hearing that mix because I think Ed's done a better job now. But it's interesting because some people would maybe listen to Ed's mix and say, I actually prefer it having that more of a kind of. It's got more of a feel, more of a groove, but. At the end of the day, when you're trying to honour the rough is, or the reference is relaxed. I was trying to give Ed an analogy, and when I was doing the mix, I almost seen it like a Bailey's. Not like when you drink, you say like you've got a whiskey, and you've got a Bailey's, like a whiskey's, like kind of gives you a bit of a quick burn and it's a bit hairy around the edges. Bailey's, quite a bit of ice, getting a very slow burn, very relaxing, very warm. You just sit back and you can just knock them back all night quite easily. Where, if you think about, certain mixes or certain approaches that people would take to this, people would probably emphasize the attack a little bit more and kind of put a little bit more hair on this mix, but that just wasn't the vibe. So I think you caught that very well in this mix. I think vocally, I think you've took the vocal on and put it in a bit of a better place. In my mix, I've went even safer with it because I did a mix and then I put it on the Discord that I've got a private Discord now, and everybody was like, "No, what, Paul? Well, musically, wow, okay, this is a great mix, but the vocal's a little bit annoying." And there's a lot of, it's like, I don't know what you would call it, maybe 1-2K, 800, 900, whatever that is, and it just can get a little bit grating, so you've got to be very careful. So I think you did quite a good job of pushing the vocal to its limit, where you could still get like the upper mid-range without maybe kind of getting a little bit too much. Because I think me and you, compression-wise, think have made the right decision. And I noticed that in the mastered version, the vocal's quite more clamped, like the mid-channel's more clamped. And I think it's needed because tonally, the singer's quite dynamic tonally. So in the verses, it's very kind of dark. And then, when he hits that chorus, it can just get, if you had the raw tracks, you know what I mean, that I needed to put a lot of work in them. So I think you've done a great job there. I think backing vocals, you did a great job just setting them in the right place. You were about to say something, I could see it.
I was going to say with the vocals, just to emphasize what Paul was explaining there, is it's not quite a proximity thing, it's a vocal register thing. And I know this from my own singing, that when you sing low, it's very easy to get that rich sound. But when you go high, your voice goes like that and the sound moves to the back of your throat, and that's when you can get a bit more nasally. And the difficult frequencies for me were 4, 5, maybe even high as 6K. And my secret weapon in that was two things. FabFilter Pro Q4 in spectral mode at, I think, 4K. That just does a little bit of tucking. That's my go-to vocal EQ now. Even though I did say it was very CPU heavy. It is if you start doing mid-side processing and side chaining. But the spectral mode is worth putting on. And the other thing was a parallel with my Fairchild compression, absolutely pinned, in warm mode. I think there's a warm preset in the UAD one. And with an EQ before it, band passed basically between 200 and I think 600 hertz. And that comes up in the choruses to help counteract when he goes up, register-wise. When he goes up like that, you've still got that low end coming in just to give it a bit of a hug in the background. I didn't bother with any left or right parallel processing on this one. I didn't feel like it needed the extra width, because I feel like I achieved, I dare say, more width than Mark, but Mark's got this mid-side thing that if you split the EQ and listen to just the left and the right, somehow it sounds bigger. But I feel like there's more width and ambience on mine, which was intentional. But.
Yeah, I think what Mark did was Mark made the lead vocal like mono on its own, and I think he's maybe added some kind of form of side information, maybe added a dB at the sides and the instruments, because they do just there's a separation with the vocal. Just kind of sits on its own. But I think what me and you've done, we've kind of went for an overall kind of blend. One thing I wanted to ask you was, what did you do about the I'll see if I could try and recreate it. So it's like, it's just me and my suitcase, Nashville, I'm on my way. There was that specific bit. It sounded almost like somebody just put their hand over their mouth every time you'd go to that bit, and I wondered if that was proximity effect. Because I tried I remember I had like a dynamic EQ on 3 bands. I found that kind of muddy resonances and had to get the threshold in a way where it would just tuck out that certain bit. Did you find that? And I'm just interested to see if you did hear that, kind of how you fixed that.
Didn't notice it. Didn't fix it.
Right, okay. There you go. Right.
I mean, could you hear it in my mix?
No, I think see in solo, I think it's because I was listening to it a bit in solo just to hear any issues. And then I heard it in solo, and then I didn't hear it as much in the mix. But it's one of those things where, because I knew it was there, I was kind of, maybe it was a placebo thing where my head was going, yeah, you need to clean that up a little bit. But it's not as much
perils
of a problem.
of mixing in sober.
Perils
of mixing sober. Talking about drinks on the podcast. He's not sober. The perils of mixing in solo. You can hear problems and take them out that actually aren't necessarily a problem in the mix.
Yeah.
Key lesson.
Yeah, so I think that percussion-wise, I think you stuck quite well to the rough. It was quite a difficult mix in places because in Mark's mix, I could hear, for what I think you just thought they were lower down. What I thought I heard was that in the first part of the verse, the bongos aren't in it. And then in the second part of the verse, the bongos come in and it's in the chorus. And then in the start of the second verse, they're out and they bring them in. I thought it was a production thing, I thought. But I noticed that you've kept the bongos in, that they've just, like, the way they came.
So they were obviously recorded at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of bleed from one to the other. But in the verse, in Mark's, there is what I'd call the left conga, the higher pitched one.
Right, okay.
Conga or bongo. Bongo. No, conga, because
yeah, I got confused. I'm not a drummer. I said conga on it, but I thought I was like, there's a bongo and a conga. Are they two different things?
Yeah, so bongos are small.
Okay.
Kind of shallow.
Right, okay.
Bongos are shallow. Congas are like, a meter tall, big, heavy, girthy things. So yeah, they were labeled congas, so I think they were just the big ones. But I felt like they were in the first verse, but only the left one, the higher pitched one. And the lower one comes in the chorus.
Right, okay.
But there's a slight bit of bleed if you compress them. So might have given the illusion of it coming out. But yeah, for me, in the reference mix, they were a little too low. And I was like, they're kind of there for feel, but the drummer in me wanted just a little bit more. The thing I think I struggled with the most was the slide guitars. After the first chorus, there's a tag section. And Mark's got this sound, and I heard it, and I thought, okay, he's clearly done some flanging or modulation of some kind. I didn't even bother trying to recreate that sound. But then I tried to figure out the panning, and I had the lower sounding guitars panned closer to the middle, but off center, so they weren't balanced. It's just they had that little bit of awkward offness, and then the higher ones a bit wider. How did you approach that section? Because Mark got a really good sound. I couldn't get that.
Again, didn't even bother trying. I just basically looked for where the level was, where I thought the panning was, and then I just added in my reverb effects. I've got a effects end. It's like a reverb left, delay right, and then I just blended that to taste. So I had, I think, the guitar on the left and the effect on the right. So that was kind of giving me a bit of stereo that way. But yeah, I just didn't really overthink it. I just thought, right, okay, that's where that is. That's the level of it. And then, I just did what I thought was right. But yeah, I think overall, mate, I think it's I think a client would be happy with that because they'd sit and listen to it and say, he's stuck to my intention. He's just, giving it. It's just a little bit different. That's all it is. I think the piano, you've got the right level for the piano. That was a difficult one because there's certain elements that are quite well recorded and quite nice parts. So a part of you does want to bring them in. But it's one of these mixes where this is what Mark does so well, is that he's very tasteful of when, in the case of he knows, and again, this might just be a production decision, and he's followed that, where just because it's there doesn't mean it needs to be heard. And there's certain parts where it'll just come in. So at the end of the song, the piano comes in. So I remember clip gaining that up, or I think it was automation. No, it was automation. I automated that bit up. So again, he's quite tasteful when he brings stuff in and he brings stuff out. And it's quite easy with mixes like this to try and make everything be heard. Where there's a bit with the kind of what you would call the bridge bit, the bit before the chorus, where there's this guitar, and I always wanted to have it a little bit louder. But in his mix, he's got it barely there. It's just there. And then when you listen to it as a cohesive piece, and you're not thinking as a mixing engineer, it just all works really well and keeps this smooth thing where nothing's grabbing your attention like that, which is could be, a lot of mixers tend to have that thing where it's like this comes in, but this mix wasn't that. So I think you flowed it really well. I think that you stuck well to it. I think your verbs were very well chosen. I didn't feel like anything was washed out. So yeah, it was just your interpretation of the mix. The only thing I would say would be maybe, again, because I made the vocal a little bit safe, maybe just make that kind of upper mid-range a little bit safer in the low end. I think if you get the low end, that'll probably be that send it away job done, and that's your interpretation of the mix.
Yeah, and as we're learning the battle with the low end versus the vocals, or at least I seem to struggle with bass level and vocal level. If I have one wrong, I get the other one wrong. And I did wonder if they were both slightly too loud in this, but anyway, this is also a case of I finished this about 20 minutes before we did the podcast. So again, but from a professional point of view, if that was the deadline, that would be the mix they'd be getting. Now there's scope to do quick revision. So, but I agree. I think it's ballpark. And you touched on a really good point where there's so many parts coming in. There's like there's a slide guitar on this side. There's a piano on that side. There's a
Rhodes
slide
as well.
There's a Rhodes on this side. There's another guitar on that side. And things are coming in. And it's tempting to want them to be heard. And it was tempting to get the side information that Mark does so well by having those quite prominent. And one version that I did of this makes what everything was quite forward and prominent. And it was a bit of a typical Ed Thorne mix. And I had to go back in and just reassess the levels because I got a bit carried away, which I did in headphones. So I did most of this on my Sennheiser HD490s tuned to Harman using the Dear VR room crossfeed. It's not really crossfeed, it's like a room simulator, so it's basically doing some kind of crossfeed. And then I was a bit more meticulous about matching his panning and levels. So it was good ear training. I feel like you've done more of this on your channel, trying to match things. So you've definitely got the fidelity of hearing. Yeah, I feel like this, I was always up against it on this one. So let's hear Paul's mix, because again, as he has done for the last few, he's done a rather remarkable job.
It's been on my mind since I was a little child. Guess I had no choice from the way it made me smile. And all I ever wanted is to live my dream. Where I come from, it gets hard just to make ends meet. I traveled up and down any road, but still I just can't seem to find a home. So please don't ask me to stay. I got no time to waste. It's just me and my suitcase. Nashville, I'm on my way. Now I reckon everybody wants to be a star. Live in a big old house and drive a real nice fancy car. But in my life I've gotten used to the simple things, and there's no replacing a smiling face. It's a down old thing. Oh, traveled up and down any room,
So that was Paul Third's mix of Nashville featuring Chad Burton, originally mixed by Mark Daniel Nelson. Remember, we were referencing the mix, not the mastered version that is available on streaming platforms. If you want to hear the the reference mix, you can do so via the Produce Like a Pro Academy website. And if you're looking for multi-tracks, it's a great resource, and that's where we get a lot of our tracks. So, Paul, what I think you've done there is take Mark's mix, musically replicate it very beautifully. I feel you took the bass a step further and made that more of a bit more of a feature. I feel in the original, it's almost like a synth where it's almost a pad more than a bass part. But I feel like you kind of got the best of both and elevated the bass to become a part to give it a slightly more modern sound and a little bit more drive, which I think worked really well. Your placement of everything in the stereo field is spot on. Everything's controlled. And yeah, I just think you did a good job. One or two bits, I think, as a result of using the stereo field, poke out slightly in places. And I'm thinking particularly there's a couple of acoustic guitar notes. And there was one guitar on the left that had a bit of annoying frequency at about 1K. I remember having to dip out a dB, I think, and maybe another dB on a dynamic. That perceived volume of that frequency might be causing me to think that. But, I mean, other than that, it's definitely honouring the rough and slightly modernising it and giving it the Paul Third treatment.
Yeah.
So well done.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so I'm going to say something that our good friend Tyrone, we were talking about, certain mixes and stuff like that, and me and him like to get into debates every so often. And it was just really good conversation, and he just said this one thing to me, and he went, Paul, I'm going to be honest with you. It doesn't matter how little or how much you do, you will always sound like Paul Third. Even if it's a fader move, even if it's just a quick balance and a tiny dash of reverb and a little bit of compression, it's always going to sound like Paul Third because your taste is what comes out in your mixes. And that's
taste,
the same...
hearing.
Correct.
Systems.
Yep. Again, it's like your choice of the tools you do, you know what I mean? The choice of monitoring that you have. It all kind of boils down to the way the end result is going to come through. And I think many people have got this thing, and me and Ed have spoken about it before, where we need to have our own sound. Yeah, we need to have like a Paul Third and an Ed Third sound. An Ed Third sound? That's what actually most people say we need, Ed.
Terrifying.
we need an Ed Third sound. Everybody says it, me and you will come together. Be the perfect balance.
There's no coming together on this podcast.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think what's important to, use this as an example is that you can listen to the same song and try to honour the rough, but no matter what you do, it's always going to sound like you. Ed's mix sounds like Ed and mine sounds like me, and Mark's sound like Mark's. And that's something that when you learn that, all of a sudden matching a rough doesn't seem as... I was going to say the term degrading. That's not the right term, but... you know what I mean? Because I think before it used to be like, I'm not doing what I want to do, because it's like you feel like you're following rules. It's like I've got to stick to this lane. But after, just Tyrone saying that, I was like, you're absolutely right. Like, no matter, even the simplest of things, it will sound like me, because it's just, thinking that that's there and that's there, how I get to there might be slightly different, and nuances, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it also takes the pressure off. I mean, trying to reverse engineer Mark Daniel Nelson.
Tried it. It's a fucking nightmare.
It's impossible. The guy's got
impossible.
Different plugins for a start, a different workflow, and just he's 20 years probably down the line in terms of experience from where we are at a guess, 10, 15 at least. And that speaks volumes, and you can hear that in his musicality.
Yep.
So you're right, we're never going to sound like that, but by just the very practice of trying to copy these things really gives you an insight into his mindset and what he's prioritizing. And it was quite interesting to analyze, okay, well, why has he put that there and why has he put that so far back? Okay, well, I've got this there, but it's sounding in your face. How do I get it sounding back? Is it a combination of stage one, reverb, different settings to execute that? Those forward and back elements for me in this were were an interesting challenge that I enjoyed. So in terms of an ear and skill development exercise, I think this was great, stressful as it was at times. But that's just me putting pressure on myself because I've tried to replicate something perfectly that I have no chance of replicating even remotely perfectly because, as Paul's just said very eloquently, Mark is Mark, I am me, Paul is Paul. We all hear things and do things differently. So taking that pressure off might be something I do next time. This is a very good point to make. So the practice will be the same on the next mix I think I do or we do, where we can replicate something or reverse engineer or at least try and honor the mix. And then, try and take it forward. Hey there, Ed here. You may recognize my voice from doing all the other DistroKid advert segments. This time I didn't want to just do a typical advert talking about stuff to do with DistroKid. I actually wanted to give you my feedback about the service because I genuinely do use DistroKid for uploading my music. And I know Paul does, and it turns out Dan Worrell does as well. I've used DistroKid since 2019. As you can see on the screen, I have 6 releases so far. It is genuinely super easy to use. The tracks get into Spotify within 24 hours, which is remarkable. Apple Music takes a little bit longer. I'd suggest giving that 10 to 14 days. The hyperfollow links are really useful for advanced promotion of your tracks, and the promo cards are really great visual aids for social media promotion. Ooh, I particularly like that one. DistroKid collect all the royalties from your streaming services, and here you can find an itemized breakdown of where all your income has come from. There's also a DistroKid referral where you can save your friends $10 per sign-up by creating your own VIP referral link. Now, I feel like there were a few little areas where there was scope for development or interpretation. I don't want to say improvement because Mark's done a great job, but development in a direction. What were you thinking with this? Because we could have quite easily, and I did a mix of this where it was quite drum heavy and it was a bit more kind of groovy, but it lost its kind of sensitivity at that point, didn't it? So I had to back that off quite a bit. So there was potential to go quite out there. Where did you feel like you could have taken it if you had been given free rein?
I probably would have done what you done in your mix. I probably would have in the first mix.
In my mix we've just heard, or the one you
before.
Heard off,
I would have brought the snare a little bit more. I would have wanted a little bit more of that shuffle, kind of feel like. But I think at the base I would have kept the same. But to be honest, it was one of those where the more I listened to that reference, the more I kind of leaned into it and I understood it and I just accepted that was the way of it, and I quite enjoyed leaning into it. There was something with the congas that I just couldn't get right, and I tried stage 1 and I tried does it need compression, and I was like, right, oh no, I think maybe you should maybe put it a little bit white and it just kind of pop in. And so I tried my good friend Emma Chellick's plug-in Dynawide. And would you believe it? There was a conga preset.
Really?
And I went on the conga preset, and the sound of the congas in that mix is like probably 95% of that plug-in in that preset. And what it did was, it just kind of tucked in the congas quite nicely, added a little bit of top end to it. So when I was listening to it, it just comes in. Because what I like about the way that I did the congas was, it was compressed enough, but you had the top end, but it would just go, and it would come in, but it wouldn't be obtrusive. So it gave you the feel element of it, and you knew it was there, but it wasn't coming in and being quite intrusive. And I kind of felt in Mark's mix a little bit. I think probably something he maybe struggled was trying to get that conga to just because it was quite dynamic in certain places. It'd be quiet and loud. It was trying to get it where it wasn't too distracting. And I think I just heard like he was maybe trying to battle a little bit to get that sitting right, but that preset just did it, and it just gave me the width. It kind of just did kind of that and just surrounded itself around the mix. And then it was just really all about bits of stage 1 and, being simple with it. I just didn't overthink it. Like Emra tells me all the time, Paul, sometimes you just overthink. He's like, I don't think, I just do. He went, so just do. So I was sitting there going, right, listen to the rough. I need to sat back. So instead of trying to be like clever with it, I just go to stage 1, depth. And I play with the depth. Does that work? No. Is it too wide? No. Does it need narrowed? No. Again, you're panning, levels. Right, stage 1. And normally, maybe like 7 times out of 10, stage 1 normally does it. Normally I find the depth just does a really good job. But again, it maybe just could be adding a little bit more reverb. So I've got different effect sends, and I'll just add in the same effect sends. Again, I'm not changing anything. I'm just utilising the tools that I've got, listening to the reference or the rough, and just saying, right, okay, these are the tools that I have. This is how I can achieve the average. And with the vocal, the first one I did, I put on the Discord, and I've got a private Discord, and all the guys on there were like, Paul, I think the mix musically is fucking like gorgeous, but the vocal was a little bit annoying. And that straight away was like a red flag to me, because an average listener shouldn't listen to a song and be annoyed by the vocal, because that means it's taken away from the whole song. So I worked at it, and I used another one of Emra's plugins. It was a new one he just released this week. It's called D-Troubler, and it's based on the Bark scale. If you don't know about the Bark scale, you can Google it. And I just kind of dialed that in, and whatever it did, it just soothed a little bit of that kind of upper end, maybe 1K, 2K, 3K, and it just kind of just caressed the vocal a little bit and allowed me to add in the top end, because I was a little bit scared to add in the top end saturation that I normally add in vocals. But doing that before it allowed me to use Emra's vocal shaper and just add in that air that I always add with the top end saturation. And then what I did a little bit differently was I actually added in low end. I added in vocal shaper, I added 2.5 dB of the low. It's like, I guess, like a Pultec kind of low boost Emra has in that. And for me, what that does in the verses, it makes the verse more intimate, and it gives them a little bit more richness in the low end. Because that was something I was fighting with. I was listening to yours, my first mix, and Mark's, and there's times where, like what you were talking about earlier, when a singer sings and they've got that dynamic difference, that tonal shift, and I was like, right, I don't really want to have that much of a tonal shift, so I was trying to find a way of dynamically stopping that from happening, which I think that D-Troubler did a good job at, because what's happening is when those certain frequencies are changing, that's kind of dynamically bringing that down, and they're kind of very specific frequencies. I've not looked into it. I don't know if it finds the fundamental and then does whatever. I'm not entirely sure. I need to look into it. But yeah, it was just all about, just thinking of it as a song and just sticking to the rough and then listening and going, okay, that sounds fine. Now, I'm going to tell everybody something that's going to surprise everybody. So, I did not use any of the Hifimans. I did not use my new PMCs. I did not use any speakers. I used a pair of £280 headphones. So, now these are a very specific pair of headphones that I've been trying out, because I'm going to do a review for Mix Phones, which is me and Emra's new channel dedicated for mixing on headphones. And so they are dynamics. They're very, very, very high ohm. I think they're like 430, 460 ohm. You need a very powerful headphone amp. Like, I'm talking DX1, even the top end, like portable DAC amp was struggling, £100 one. You need something like an L30 Mark II. You need the headroom to be able to really crank them. Because if you don't crank them, they just sound soft. And the headphone, I've not told you yet, is the Audio-Technica ATH-R70xa. And I was amazed at the translation that I got. I was a little bit worried, because they do need crossfeed. So it's very, very HE1000-esque kind of like resolution and like all like nice and wide and stuff. But mixing wise, the decisions I was making when I translating. So crossfeed, I used like 60 degrees crossfeed, monoed the low end and mixed through it. And I was like, wow, this is working really well. 2 EQ bands, by the way. 2 EQ bands, that's it.
Which frequencies?
I think it was a 3 dB boost at 70, and I think it's like a 2 dB cut around 350 or something like that, and that's about it. The top end is basically nearly perfect to Harman, and they're just very, very nice sounding headphones. Sub wise, I struggle. Like, it's funny because I was like, they've not got the low sub of the Hifimans. They just, again, you get some dynamic headphones like the NDH30s. They just don't have the sub. But I think with the track being the way it was, just being able to have the 40-50 was kind of enough. Where if I was like, I don't think I'd be able to do like a really deep 808, really heavy hip hop track or something like that, where you need like the nanos would be the ones I'd go for. But yeah, it surprised me just how, well, I was able to get £280 dynamic headphones to translate. The transient response is really good and stuff, and fuck.
Yeah. I mean, I
Unbelievable.
assumed you'd done multiple mixed
No.
translations.
Didn't
translation
check on
tests.
anything else, just genuinely mixed on that to test them, and that was the mixed translation I got, and yeah, fucking unbelievable. Just
and
crazy.
that's remarkable. And I'm interested to try them for that reason. Because
Everybody will be now.
if I remember, I'll place a link in the description. It will be an affiliate link. Disapprove of us if you think we shouldn't make money out of it, but just be honest. No need for that, Paul. No need for that. There's a comment section for that. Come on.
Yes.
But something this is interesting because I have felt for the last 3 mixes, I've obviously collected, what am I listening on? 4 sets of speakers, mobile phone, in-earbuds, and usually 2 or 3 sets of headphones. I think I've been suffering from system paralysis, where I am tweaking, going through each system, hearing things that are wrong in each one, tweaking them accordingly, and by the end of the process, I've got a different mix.
Yeah.
And that really became aware on this track. And I feel like I need to just commit to 3 different things. And at the moment, those are going to be the Sennheiser HD-490s. There's something about them I just get on with. Admittedly, it won't give me the transient response for the low end of the nanos. Nothing will. They're incredible for that. But there's something just as an overall, especially with Harman and especially with the Dear VR mix room thing, there's something about that does help me just tune in. And that's why this mix was so good, because I was using them to tune in on all the really little details, like specific reverbs and levels and stuff. And then moving to the Amphions, but they've got this low-mid thing going on that we've been discussing as well this week. I think I've got them too close to the wall to optimize them and a speaker next to them, but that's logistics, without getting rid of the heads. But the heads are good for clients in the studio, so it's always a trade-off. Oh, and the Angry Boxes, because they are honest. They are brutally honest speakers. Any sibilance, any issues in the top end, the Angry Boxes are going to do exactly what they say and scream at you. So I think those 3, Amphions, Angry Boxes, and HD-490s would be my translation checkers. Obviously, mobile phone, even AirBuds as well, Apple AirBuds. But what the AirBuds do is make everything sound good. I've listened to mixes where I know there's problems and the problems just aren't there on the AirBuds. So you have to be careful. They also do something weird with the panning. Everything, it's like, if you have there's a visual representation here for you guys listening. Say, for example, that's your panning curve. So your center stuff's up there in the middle and everything slightly tails off in level as you go wider. What the AirPods seem to do is flatten that and boost all the wide stuff to make everything seem wider. It's almost like anti-crossfeed.
Right, okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Let me know in the comments if that's a load of bullshit or if that resonates with you. But they do something. I guess the equivalent would be turning crossfeed on and off. There's that much of a difference in them. So whatever they're doing is something artificial, I think.
The only thing I would caveat to that was that, again, with me obviously hearing that the low end could have been improved, for me, if you would have went to the nanos, I think your low end would have been where it needed to be, probably. I think I would probably say the nanos are probably more important than the Sennheisers. However, Sennheisers are very good for big picture. But I think because low end is so key, and we do, and even think about this as a very relaxed song. If you didn't get the low end right, it could be the problem that just kind of fights against you a little bit.
You are right, and there'll be those that think my low end is overbearing in this, and there'll be those that think it's fine. So fair point. Okay, so 5 systems.
Yes, 5.
Right. Might as well just listen to all 8.
Just fucking listen to them all.
10 or however many it is.
If it sounds good on them all, then fucking hell, man. If it sounds good on them all, then seriously, what is it going to sound shit on, really? You know what I mean? It's a game of averages, you know what I mean?
My van speakers.
Fuck the van speakers. Honestly, I'm done referencing cars. I couldn't give a shit what it sounds like in the car, because every car sounds different. It's an absolute bollock. The car test.
Like your car because remember we had a mix where I was like, oh, there's no bass
Yeah.
in my van, and you were like, the bass is raging in my car, and I was like, okay, well, maybe we should have actually measured exactly what frequency we were referring to, because there may have been a discrepancy in prominence. DistroKid sponsors the Working Audio Tools podcast, and 30% off your first year subscription can be found in the podcast show notes and the YouTube video description. Hyperfollow is the easiest way to place all of your content in one single place, making finding all of your content super easy for your audience. Upload artwork for your release, edit the information, and apply links to all of the streaming platforms your music is going to be available, which of course on DistroKid is potentially all of them that exist now and even in the future. Add social media buttons so your audience can find you and your latest music video. Creating a beautiful landing page with a preview of your music is easy with Hyperfollow. Hyperfollow links can be created for all of your releases, and it enables you to create pre-save links for your audience to pre-order your music before it's released. This link is shareable on all of your platforms and a great way to promote your next release, only with DistroKid. So what have you learned from doing this, Paul? I feel like it was, as I said many times in the episode, a very good exercise to try and reverse engineer this and honor the rough and try and improve it. I don't really think I improved it at all, but in places I think maybe the vocals, but I think you did a good job of modernizing it, contemporaryizing it. But what did you get out of this exercise?
I thought it was quite good for me to test myself on, a different headphone and stuff like that. And, I'm starting to find that, mixing on headphones is quite easy. And Emma had said to me this week, Paul, I think you're at the level now where your mixes are getting that good where you could mix on any headphone, Paul. To the extent of if you were to mix so far, you'd be like, yeah, this isn't working, bin it. I'm quite quick of knowing what works and what doesn't. But yeah, I think I've been learning to every mix, and it gets easier. Honestly, it gets easier when you've got a rough to work with. If a client gives you the rough, they're giving you the intention. All you're doing is using your taste. So again, when I was doing the bass, I wasn't trying to reverse engineer it. I just went into, I swear it's as simple as me going into double tap for the compression, and I used bass shaper. And that was it. I still used a little bit of the Soothe Jason Joshua sidechain trick thing, but it's ducking a little bit. But at the end of the day, genuinely, I just used my ears and, went on Emra's bass shaper, and I just dialed stuff. I was like, right, okay, take the attack down, add maybe a little bit more sustain. I used a little bit of the distortion that he's got in there, add that a little bit. I was just using my ears and going, okay, that sounds right, leave it. And I've got this thing now where if I sit with something for longer than 10 minutes, I need to take a break and move to something else or just walk away entirely, because I found that that's something that I did quite a lot. And Emra's constantly teaching me about mixing fast and the benefits of being big picture and just using your instinct and not worrying about the tool that you're going to use. Just go to your template. If you need a reverb, there's no point trying to, I should find the right reverb for this track and audition 5 different reverbs. Because what you'll do is you'll think it's great, and then fucking half an hour later you go ahead and I like that. Just put a reverb on it. Just have a few, maybe, I know Mark's got different types of certain things that he'll use, different compressors, different reverbs and stuff. I've got that. I've always got an 1/8 note, a 1/4 note. I've got a slap delay. I've got like a reverb send for, a reverb and delay send for guitars. I've got a keys delay. And again, I just do the taste. I'm never fussed whether it's like the acoustic guitar verb goes to like the piano or something like that. I'm just genuinely thinking broad. I'm just going, right, maybe that could do with reverb. Just go with that. You know what I mean? And I just use the same tools, and it's limited, and it's just about getting to the end result as quick as you can, and then listening back and thinking, right, A, B at the rough. Yeah, I think that's better. Yeah, because I think I did a better job on the congas for me in this mix. And I think separation-wise, I liked a lot of the separation that I got on it without being too Paul Third, what I've done before, where it's separated to the point where you can hear everything. I tried not to do that, to honour the rough. But it's just all about your instinct, your taste, and teaching yourself to... it's enhancing, but it's just giving a little bit of your taste. And it's just, no, it is, Ed, it's a sprinkle. It's a sprinkle of taste. It's not a coming in and going, I'm going to do this. I always thought, honestly, because I've been watching Mix with the Masters, I always thought CLA was this really, really big guy where he'd be like, yeah, so I'm going to chuck in this compressor, that compressor, fuck it, 15 dB compression here, going to do that. CLA's not like that. Maybe he does it in fucking other places where he's done live things, but in the mix of the masters that I've watched, very tasteful. Very tasteful.
Right.
He listens, man. CLA's are very good at listening. His automation is on point, where a lot of what he does is just sitting there thinking, that's came in, that's going to get brought in, that's going to get brought down. And he sees it in parts, and he thinks of the song in certain parts, and he'll go, right, you need to win, you need to come down, you need to win, you need to come down. And it's a lot of it's fader moves, and a lot of it's maybe just like, he'll just go to his SSL, a little bit EQ there, a little bit EQ there. He's not thinking, but he's not being destructive. He's not kind of going, I think a lot of the stuff when we watch with CLA, with the wave stuff, is sometimes maybe to sell things, and it's like, add a bit of bark, and add a bit of this, and add a bit of that, and it's like showing it off. But when you watch,
isn't it?
but when you watch him in a mix, he's really tasteful, and he's not doing as much as you think, and he's using the same stuff all the time. He'll go to the same reverbs, the same delays, he'll have the same slap, he'll go to genuinely the same things, and it's simple. So that's why he can genuinely do a mix for the masters and get a mix done in like fucking an hour. And you're like, wow, you've got automation in there as well, and it's tasteful, and it's just, he just uses his ears and his instinct. And I'll guarantee you, he'll work with roughs, and he's not sitting there going, I'm CLA and I'm bigger than the song. That's what I thought he did, and that's what I thought every mixer did. But when you actually speak to them, you realise that they're very respectful. That's how you get work in this industry. That's how me and Ed were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, about Ed, struggling to get other people to mix his songs, because he sometimes maybe gives you a bit of a free rein, and then he goes, it's never the way I want it. Because none of us have me and Nicholas didn't stick to his intention. We just thought, free for all. When if we would have stuck to his intention and just gave a little bit of sprinkle and a taste, he would have been like, right, okay, thank you. Like, you were basically able to take my intention to the next 5-10%. That's all our job is. And hopefully that's what me and Ed have done. And I know that's what Mark would have done, with the rough, because he would have worked at a rough. You know what I mean? That's what's difficult for us. Our roughs are fucking Mark Daniel Nelson's mixes. It's like annoying.
Sometimes we were shooting ourselves in the foot before we even started. What would have been nice, actually, would be to hear the rough he was working to.
Correct. I agree with you. I know. But at the end of the day, that's something that we are definitely going to get. Ed just accepted a project today. Have you got a rough for it, by the way? Not going to go into details, but have you got a rough for it?
I do have a rough of the instrumental.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got something to work on, and again, this has probably been
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, but again, at least you've got something to work off, you know what I mean? I think that's what we know, is that if, you ever want to get in contact with us, we are going to respect. There isn't going to be any more of this, I'm Paul Thorne, that said phone, I took liberties. No, we've learned that doesn't work. If you give us your tracks, we will not take liberties, unless you say to us, look, I mixed a whole album where the artist was like, I'm just completely done creatively, I don't know where to go. Paul, can you just give me what you think sounds good? And then I'll just listen to it and make adjustments, and we'll work together. And it worked out. It took ages to get it finished, but we did it. But that's very, very, very rare. 9 times out of 10, the client's going to say, here's my rough, make it 5-10% better. So you better stick to it, and you better just sprinkle a taste. So yeah, if you liked our sprinkling of taste, then again, leave your comments down below. And I enjoyed it. I think me and Ed are getting at a very good level, translation-wise. I think we're learning more about translation. We're learning more about the craft of mixing in regards to not overcomplicating things. And yeah, I just think it's going to get better and better and better, to the point where we might need to stop doing this because we're full-time mixers. Hopefully.
I mean, but if we end this, you'll just set up another channel or another podcast. Or
I know.
I'm surprised you've got a 4th channel already, mate.
I need to stop. I need to calm down. Honestly, that mixed ones is my last one. That's my last one.
Quote you on that. Definitely check out Paul and Emra's channel, Mixed Phones. It's kind of similar format to this, slightly podcasty, but short, bite-sized snippets of information about mixing on headphones. It's a very good channel. And on that bombshell, it's been emotional again. Thank you for listening. If you are listening on Amazon or any of the streaming platforms, please leave a review and some comments. That would be good for the engagement. Most of our audience is on YouTube, but there are a few people, so we'd like to push that on the streaming platforms. Thanks for engaging and listening as always. Speak to you soon.